Forgotten sci-fi flops that became cult legends. Sometimes, the movies that fail the hardest end up leaving the deepest mark. Hollywood is full of stories where studios spent millions, critics rolled their eyes, and audiences stayed home. But here's the twist. Years later, those same films became cult favorites, studied in classrooms, quoted by fans, and celebrated as masterpieces. Today, we're diving into the world of forgotten sci-fi flops, films that bombed at the box office but secretly changed the future of cinema forever. Blade Runner, 1982. When Ridley Scott released Blade Runner in 1982, it should have been a sure thing. The recipe looked flawless. Harrison Ford, riding high after Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars, a director fresh off the sci-fi horror hit Alien, and a neon-drenched world inspired by Philip K. Dick's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? On paper, this was the kind of movie that couldn't miss. But the audience thought otherwise. With a budget close to $30 million and a worldwide box office take of just over $40 million, Blade Runner was stamped as a disappointment. Critics were split down the middle. Some admired its stunning visuals, while others called it slow, confusing, and emotionally distant. Part of the problem? Studio meddling. The original theatrical cut included a clunky voiceover that Ford himself hated and a tacked-on happy ending designed to soften the bleak tone. The result left audiences puzzled and unsatisfied. Instead of the thrilling space adventure many expected, they got a moody detective story that asked heavy questions about humanity, morality, and what it really means to be alive. But here's the kicker. Over time, Blade Runner rose from the ashes. With the release of director's cuts and final cuts that stripped away studio interference, Scott's original vision came to life, a haunting, rain-soaked nightmare of corporate greed, environmental collapse, and blurred lines between man and machine. What once felt alienating became prophetic. Today, Blade Runner is hailed as one of the most influential sci-fi films ever made, shaping everything from The Matrix to Ghost in the Shell. It may have stumbled in 1982, but decades later, it sprinted into legend. And if one misunderstood masterpiece could recover, so could another. The Iron Giant, 1999. Fast forward to 1999, and Brad Bird's The Iron Giant became one of the most heartbreaking flops in animation history. Costing around $70 million to make, it only earned about $31 million at the box office. Critics adored it, but audiences barely knew it existed. Why? Because Warner Brothers barely marketed it. Many people didn't even hear of the film until it was already out of theaters. The story, based on Ted Hughes's novel The Iron Man, follows a boy in 1950s America who befriends a massive robot from space. But what sounds like a simple children's cartoon unfolds into a deeply emotional tale about fear, friendship, and Cold War paranoia. Brad Bird crafted a film that avoided cheap pop culture jokes and instead delivered timeless storytelling. The voice cast brought it to life with heart and sincerity. Jennifer Aniston as the boy's mother, Harry Connick Jr. as the beatnik artist, and Vin Diesel, yes, Vin Diesel as the voice of the giant, delivering unforgettable lines with only a handful of words. Though it flopped in theaters, The Iron Giant refused to stay buried. Through DVD sales, cable reruns, and word of mouth, it slowly grew into one of the most beloved animated films of its time. Today, it's often compared to E.T. for its emotional weight, and many consider it a flawless piece of sci-fi storytelling. In 1999, it was a tragedy. Today, it's a treasure. And it wasn't alone in finding new life after being dismissed. Sunshine, 2007. Danny Boyle's Sunshine hit theaters in 2007 with a premise that should have been irresistible. The sun is dying, and humanity's last hope lies with a crew sent to reignite it using a massive nuclear device. With a stellar cast including Cillian Murphy, Chris Evans, Michelle Yeoh, and Hiroyuki Sanada, it had all the makings of a classic. And for 2 acts, it was. The film balanced the isolation of deep space with the crushing responsibility of saving the world. Its visuals were breathtaking golden light-bathing claustrophobic ship interiors, haunting images of a dying sun, and a score that still gives goosebumps. But then came the third act. In a shocking twist, the story shifted into horror thriller territory, introducing a burned, half-mad antagonist that divided audiences. Some loved the boldness, others felt betrayed. Word of mouth soured, and with weak marketing from Fox Searchlight, the movie never got the audience it deserved. It cost about $40 million to make, but barely earned $32 million worldwide. Still, time was kind. Over the years, Sunshine has been reappraised as one of the most visually striking sci-fi films of the 2000s. Its ambition, its tension, and its haunting score left a mark that fans still celebrate today. But when it comes to ambition, no film went further off the deep end than the one we'll look at next. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai, 1984. If weird had a home planet, it would look like The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the eighth dimension. Released in 1984, this sci-fi comedy mashed together rock and roll, neurosurgery, particle physics, kung fu, and alien invasions into a single chaotic package. The hero, Buckaroo Banzai, is a neurosurgeon, physicist, test pilot, and rock star who, along with his eccentric crew, battles evil aliens from the eighth dimension. The movie throws audiences straight into its bizarre world without explanation. It feels like the middle chapter of a much larger saga you've never heard of, and it never slows down to catch you up. That fearless refusal to explain itself may have sealed its doom. Costing about $17 million to make, it only earned $6 million at the box office. Mainstream audiences didn't know what to make of it. But for those who embraced the madness, it became an instant cult favorite. Fans adored its quotable lines, its absurd charm, and the sense that this universe was bigger than what one movie could hold. The ending even promised a sequel, which sadly never happened. But its influence lingers. Directors and writers still cite it as inspiration for daring, unclassifiable storytelling. Still, while Buckaroo Banzai was too strange for its time, another sci-fi film failed for the opposite reason: it felt all too real. Children of Men, 2006. Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men is one of the rare films that critics hailed as a masterpiece the moment it was released, yet audiences ignored it. With a $76 million budget, it made about $70 million at the box office, not enough to cover costs once marketing was factored in. The premise is chilling. In a world where humans have lost the ability to reproduce, society is collapsing into violence and despair. Clive Owen plays Theo, a disillusioned bureaucrat who becomes responsible for protecting a miraculously pregnant woman. Cuarón created a future that feels terrifyingly real. From graffiti-covered streets to militarized checkpoints, every detail is lived in and grimy. What truly set the film apart were its long, uninterrupted takes, jaw-dropping sequences, like the ambush in the car, and the battle through a crumbling city. These weren't just flashy stunts. They forced the audience to live through the chaos in real time. But audiences in 2006 weren't ready for such a bleak vision. Marketing struggled to sell it, and it wasn't the feel-good blockbuster people wanted. Over time, however, Children of Men has been recognized as one of the defining films of the 21st century, its warnings feeling more urgent with every passing year. And speaking of big budgets with disappointing box office, few films fit that bill more than the next one. Edge of Tomorrow, 2014. Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, explosive action, a high-concept story about time loops. On the surface, Edge of Tomorrow should have been a runaway hit. But in 2014, it underperformed at the box office. With a budget of around $178 million, it grossed about $370 million worldwide. Not a flop, but disappointing for a blockbuster of that scale. The problem wasn't the film itself. In fact, critics loved it, praising its clever structure and thrilling action. The problem was the marketing. Trailers sold it as yet another generic alien invasion movie, burying its unique time loop concept. Audiences had no idea how fresh, funny, and inventive it really was. Based on the Japanese novel All You Need Is Kill, the story follows Major William Cage, a military PR officer forced into combat against alien invaders. He dies within minutes, only to wake up and relive the same day over and over. With each loop, he learns, adapts, and slowly becomes a hero with the help of Emily Blunt's Rita Vrataski, a hardened warrior who steals the show. The movie's structure kept the repetition from ever feeling stale, balancing dark humor with high stakes. Fans who discovered it after release were blown away. Over time, Edge of Tomorrow has been embraced as one of the smartest and most entertaining sci-fi action films of the decade. Proof that even bad marketing can't keep a great film down. But what happens when the ambition of a film goes so far beyond the mainstream that audiences don't even know how to process it? That's where the Wachowskis come in. Cloud Atlas, 2012. When the Wachowskis teamed up with Tom Tykwer to adapt David Mitchell's novel Cloud Atlas, the result was destined to be polarizing. Spanning 6 interconnected stories across centuries from a 19th century Pacific voyage to a post-apocalyptic future, it was a sprawling meditation on reincarnation and human connection. The budget was enormous. Over $100 million, much of it financed independently. The film earned about $130 million worldwide, but marketing costs pushed it into the red. Critics were divided. Some called it visionary, others dismissed it as overcomplicated and self-indulgent. But for those willing to go along for the ride, Cloud Atlas was unlike anything else. Its visual range was breathtaking, leaping from neon-lit future cities to fog-shrouded ruins. Its sincerity, a belief in the power of kindness and choice across time, set it apart in an age of cynical blockbusters. It may never have found mainstream success, but fans treasure it as one of the boldest cinematic experiments of the 21st century. And while Cloud Atlas confused audiences, another film from the 1980s terrified them too much, in fact, for its own good. The Thing, 1982. John Carpenter's The Thing had the bad luck of premiering in the same summer as E.T. in 1982. Audiences had just fallen in love with Spielberg's friendly alien, and they weren't ready for Carpenter's bleak, paranoid nightmare about a shape-shifting creature that turned humans into grotesque abominations. With a budget of $15 million, it only earned $19 million worldwide. Critics tore it apart, calling it too gory, too grim, and too nihilistic. But time told a different story. Today, The Thing is considered one of the greatest sci-fi horror films ever made. Rob Bottin's groundbreaking practical effects still look disturbingly real, and Carpenter's slow-burn tension is as terrifying as ever. It's a masterpiece of paranoia, trapped in the Antarctic, with a creature that can imitate anyone. Every glance and hesitation becomes a question of trust. Over the years, it has inspired countless works, from The X-Files to Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. In 1982, audiences rejected it. Now, it's essential, and the same fate awaited a more recent, slower, and more introspective sci-fi journey. Ad Astra, 2019. James Gray's Ad Astra arrived in 2019, with Brad Pitt in the lead, and stunning visuals that suggested both blockbuster spectacle and awards season prestige. With a $90 million budget, it grossed $135 million worldwide. Not terrible, but far below what was needed to be profitable. The reason? Marketing. Trailers promised high-octane action and explosive thrills. But the film itself was something very different. A slow, meditative story about isolation, grief, and the fractured bond between father and son. Pitt delivered one of his most understated performances, playing an astronaut who travels to the edge of the solar system in search of his missing father, whose doomed mission may threaten Earth. Along the way, he encounters breathtaking set pieces, a moon rover chase, a haunting abandoned station, but the real weight of the film lies in its quiet reflection. Audiences expecting non-stop action felt misled, but over time, more viewers have come to appreciate it for what it truly is, a deeply human exploration of loneliness and legacy, wrapped in some of the most stunning space imagery in modern cinema. And finally, we reach a film that was never going to please everyone, but still carved out a cult legacy like no other. Under the Skin, 2013. Jonathan Glazer's Under the Skin is one of the strangest sci-fi films ever to make it to theaters. With Scarlett Johansson in the lead, audiences might have expected a mainstream thriller. What they got instead was an eerie, hypnotic art film. Johansson plays an alien in human form, wandering Scotland and luring men into a surreal black void where they're consumed by something unspeakable. The film mixes scripted moments with hidden camera footage of real people interacting with Johansson, adding a raw, unsettling edge. There's almost no exposition. The story unfolds through visuals and mood, demanding patience and interpretation. Mika Levi's haunting score amplifies the unease, while Glazer's visuals swing between stark realism and dreamlike abstraction. On release, it flopped. Made for $13 million, it earned only $7 million worldwide. Some audiences walked out, others hailed it as a masterpiece. Over the years, its reputation has grown, with critics calling it one of the most original sci-fi films of the 21st century. It's not a movie you simply watch, it's one you experience, and it stays with you whether you want it to or not. Conclusion. So what do all these stories tell us? That failure at the box office doesn't mean failure forever. From Blade Runner to The Iron Giant, from The Thing to Edge of Tomorrow, the sci-fi films Hollywood once dismissed have gone on to inspire new generations, shape entire genres, and prove that sometimes the world just isn't ready yet. The lesson? Never judge a movie by its opening weekend, because the stories that stumble the hardest in their own time often turn out to be the ones we need the most. Which of these underrated sci-fi gems have you already discovered, and which are you adding to your watch list? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and remember, sometimes the biggest failures hide the most unforgettable futures.